Evan's eyes flickered open to a world transformed by chaos. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal and flesh, a visceral reminder of the battle that had raged. Groaning, he pushed himself up, his body protesting with sharp jabs of pain. The battlefield was eerily silent now, save for the distant crackle of fires and the occasional groan of the wounded. He was alone, surrounded by the detritus of war-twisted metal, shattered weaponry, and the still forms of soldiers who would never rise again. Evan's heart clenched at the sight, a mix of relief and guilt flooding through him as he realized his unit had left him for dead. With effort, he rose to his feet, surveying the desolation. The once verdant landscape of his home planet was now a ruin, the capital's distant silhouette barely discernible through the haze. Memories of his childhood here, of fields of grain stretching to the horizon, clashed violently with the reality before him. Evan stumbled forward, driven by an instinct to survive. He found others like him, soldiers abandoned in the hasty retreat, their injuries ranging from the manageable to the grievous. Each encounter was a stab to his spirit, forcing him to confront a harrowing decision to help and risk capture, or to continue alone in the slim hope of survival. Choosing survival, Evan pressed on, each step away from the wounded a weight on his conscience. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering of comradeship forsaken, of the humanity eroded by the necessities of war. As night began to fall, bringing with it the cold and new dangers, Evan found refuge in the ruins of a building. There, huddled in the shadows, he encountered a small band of survivors, their faces gaunt, their eyes haunted by the same horrors he had witnessed. "We need to make a choice," Evan found himself saying, his voice rough with disuse. "Stay here and die, or move and maybe find a way out of this hell." The conversation that followed was filled with desperation and fear, but also a flicker of hope. They spoke of rumors, of a possible way off-world, though none knew the truth of it. The debate was tense, the options bleak, but in the end, the decision was unanimous: they would try to escape, to find safety or die trying. Evan, by virtue of standing when others could not, found himself thrust into the role of leader. It was a position he accepted with reluctance, aware of the lives now in his hands, the path uncertain. As they prepared to leave their temporary haven, Evan looked back at the city, its ruins a testament to the cost of the conflict. The journey ahead would be perilous, fraught with enemies and uncertainty, but Evan knew there was no turning back. "Let's move out," he ordered, stepping into the darkness, the survivors trailing behind him like ghosts. Their destination was unknown, but their resolve was clear: they would find their way home or perish in the attempt. Under the cloak of darkness, Evan led the small band of survivors through the rubble-strewn streets, their steps cautious and silent. The ruins around them bore witness to the once vibrant life that had flourished here, now reduced to shadows and memories. As they moved, the group found brief refuge in the shell of an abandoned building, a momentary respite from the constant threat of enemy patrols. Here, under the cover of night, they shared their stories, a mosaic of loss, fear, and defiance. "I was with the 33rd when they hit us," murmured one, a young sniper named Tessa, her gaze distant. "Didn't even see it coming. Next thing I knew, the retreat was called, and everything fell apart." Another, a medic named Carl, added, "We were overrun. I tried to save them, I did, but there were too many wounded, too many dying." Their tales wove a tapestry of the battle's chaos, each voice adding depth to the tragedy of their defeat. Evan listened, his heart heavy with their shared burden. He knew his own story mirrored theirs: survival amid loss, the guilt of living when so many had not. "We can't change what happened," Evan finally said, his voice cutting through the despair. "But we're still here, still breathing. We owe it to those who aren't to keep moving, to find a way out of this." The conversation shifted to their plan. With no clear destination and the enemy between them and any hope of safety, they weighed their meager options. Going off-world seemed a distant dream. The spaceport now a contested zone swarming with invaders. The alternative, reaching friendly lines, was fraught with its own perils, a gauntlet through occupied territory. It's a gamble either way, Evan conceded, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. But staying here means certain death. We need to move, find a way through the enemy lines. It's our only chance. The decision was met with grim acceptance, the group united by the necessity of their situation. As dawn approached, they prepared to leave, scrounging what little supplies they could carry. Evan took a final look at the city's ruins, a silent vow to those left behind echoing in his heart. Then, turning away, he led his ragtag group into the unknown, each step a defiance against the darkness that had claimed their world. The journey was arduous, marked by close calls with enemy patrols, and the ever-present shadow of hunger and exhaustion. Yet, amid the hardship, a bond formed among them, forged in the crucible of shared adversity. The break of dawn cast long shadows over the terrain ahead, a no-man's land that stretched between Evan and his group and the flickering promise of the spaceport. The open ground before them was a stark contrast to the urban ruins they had navigated, offering no concealment from the watchful eyes of their alien adversaries. With the spaceport as their beacon, the group set out at a cautious pace, every sense attuned to the dangers that lay in wait. The vast expanse was intermittently marred by craters and the remnants of fallen ships, silent witnesses to the conflict's intensity. Evan led from the front, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. "Spread out and stay low," he instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. The tension was palpable, each member of the group keenly aware that the open ground offered little mercy for the unwary. Their progress was slow, the threat of discovery a constant companion. At one point, a distant patrol of alien soldiers prompted them to press flat into the earth, hearts pounding as the enemy passed by, oblivious to the desperate humans mere meters away. The journey was not without its losses. A sudden encounter with a roaming drone forced them into a frenzied dash for cover, resulting in one of their number, a young scout named Darren, being wounded. The group huddled in a small depression in the ground, Carl, the medic, working feverishly to stabilize Darren's condition. "We can't stay here," Evans said, the reality of their situation pressing in. "We need to keep moving, find better cover." Tessa, the sniper, nodded in agreement. "There's a ridge ahead. Might offer some shelter and a vantage point." The decision made, they resumed their trek, the weight of Darren's injury a somber reminder of the journey's stakes. The ridge, when they reached it, offered a brief respite, a moment to catch their breath and assess their next move. From their vantage point, the spaceport seemed agonizingly close, its perimeter defenses a labyrinth of challenges yet to be faced. Evans surveyed the landscape, his mind racing with potential strategies. "We'll need to be smart, use the terrain to our advantage. It's not going to be easy, but we've come too far to give up now. We'll make it," he promises, more to himself than to the others. The ridge had given them a momentary shelter, but as the sun began its descent, the stark reality of their situation set in. The spaceport, with its glaring lights and the promise of escape, seemed just within reach yet impossibly guarded. Evan and his group, concealed by the dying light, made their final preparations, their eyes fixed on the prize. Evan outlined the plan with a calm he didn't feel. "The spaceport's defenses are tight, but there's a weak point on the northeastern side. It won't be easy, and we'll need a distraction," he said, glancing at Tessa. "That's where you come in." Tessa nodded, understanding her role. Her position on the ridge would allow her to cover the team's approach and create the necessary diversion. Despite the risk, there was a glint of determination in her eyes. "I'll keep them busy," she assured, checking her rifle. The group split, with Tessa staying behind as the rest made their way toward the designated entry point. The tension was palpable, each step measured to avoid detection. The closer they got, the more formidable the spaceport's defenses appeared, a daunting maze of energy barriers and patrol routes. As they neared the perimeter, Tessa took her shot, the sound of her rifle breaking the night stillness. The shot hit its mark, causing a momentary chaos among the alien guards and drawing their attention away from Evan and the others. Seizing the opportunity, Evan led the charge, their approach now a desperate sprint across the open ground. The distraction worked, but only briefly. Soon, the air was alive with the sound of alarms and the whine of approaching drones. The battle was frenetic, a blur of motion and light. Evan and his team fought with a desperation born of the knowledge that there was no turning back. Carl, despite his non-combat role, saved them more than once, his quick thinking disabling a drone that had nearly flanked them. The entry point loomed ahead, a narrow gap in the spaceport's defenses that was their only chance. The group made a final push, their bodies pushed to the limit, every ounce of their being focused on reaching that sliver of hope. As they breached the perimeter, the reality of what they had achieved set in. They were inside, but the danger was far from over. The spaceport was a labyrinth of corridors and hangars, each turn presenting a new challenge. "We're close," Evan whispered, a promise to his weary companions. "Stay sharp." With the group now deep within the bowels of the spaceport, the sense of urgency was palpable. The chaotic environment of the port, filled with the noise of departing ships and the clamor of distant battles, offered both cover and confusion. Evan's leadership was more crucial than ever, guiding his small band through the perilous maze toward the hangars that promised escape. As they navigated through the crowded passageways, evading both enemy soldiers and panicked civilians, the toll of their journey was evident in their weary faces and slow, determined steps. Despite the exhaustion, the hope of salvation, of leaving the war-torn planet behind, spurred them on. Reaching the designated hangar, they were confronted with a new obstacle. A security checkpoint, manned by alien forces, stood between them and the last ship scheduled for departure. The group took cover, assessing the situation with grim determination. "We can't go back," Evans said, his voice low but firm. "It's now or never. We'll have to fight our way through." The group readied themselves for what was to come, each member checking their weapons and steeling their resolve. Tessa, who had rejoined the group during their trek through the spaceport, offered a nod of solidarity. "Let's make it count," she whispered. The ensuing battle was a testament to their desperation and will to survive. Evan led the charge, his team following close behind, their movements synchronized and precise. The alien soldiers, caught off guard by the ferocity of their assault, fell one by one, but not without exacting a heavy toll on Evan's group. In the chaos, Carl was hit, his injury severe. The medic, who had saved so many, now found himself in need of saving. With no time for hesitation, the group rallied, providing cover as they dragged Carl to the relative safety of the hangar. As they breached the interior of the hangar, the sight of the waiting ship was a beacon of hope. Evan, glancing back at the carnage they had left behind, felt the weight of their losses. They had paid a high price for this chance at escape. With the last of their energy, they boarded the ship, securing Carl and preparing for departure. The takeoff was tense, the ship's engines roaring to life as enemy fire rained down upon them. But as they ascended into the night sky, leaving the planet and the war behind, a collective sense of relief washed over them. Evan, standing at the ship's viewing port, watched as the planet receded into the distance. The journey had changed them all, forged them into survivors bound by shared adversity. As the stars stretched out before them, promising new beginnings, Evan realized that their exodus was not an end but a new chapter. "We made it," he murmured, a mix of sorrow and hope coloring his voice. "But we'll never forget what it cost." I hope you enjoyed this story. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, be sure to check out some of Dakota Clarke's other works on the playlist here.